Please stand for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Madam Clerk, can we have a roll call?
Director Alma Green. Director Mary Belfay. Secretary Steve Rodwick.
Here.
Secretary Steve Rodwick.
Here.
Vice Chairperson Jen Goodlin. Here. Chairperson Robert Anderson.
Here. I'd like to welcome everyone here. And at this point, do we have any public comment on something that is not on the agenda tonight? Thank you, Mr. Stonebreaker. And that brings us to the consent agenda. Any issues? Can we get a motion?
Mr. Chair, I move that the board approve all the consent agenda items except consent agenda item 3.1B, which is the special meeting minutes of September 18th. I'll second.
Madam Clerk, can we get a roll call?
Director Alma Green.
Aye.
Director Mary Belfay.
Aye.
Secretary Steve Rodwick.
Aye.
Vice Chairperson Jen Goodlin. Aye. And Chairperson Robert Anderson.
Aye.
Motion carries with 5 ayes. I just want to note that in the attendance, I forgot to put a apostrophe or not apostrophe, parenthesis after clerk. And then at the very bottom of both pages, it didn't list what the meeting was. Like down at the bottom, it'll say like what the meeting is and the date. And I forgot that. So I corrected those and reprinted. That was it.
Motion to approve minutes, item 33.1B with corrections.
Madam Clerk, can we get a roll call?
Director Alma Green.
Aye.
Director Mary Belfay.
Aye.
Secretary Steve Rodwick.
Aye.
Vice Chairperson Jen Goodlin. Aye. And Chairperson Robert Anderson.
Aye.
Motion carries with 5 ayes.
We're going to come back to old business and start with new business. Item 6.1, Honey Run Covered Bridge Association MOU update. Dan?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So there is a board report. I'll show you the page here in a second. 33, 43, page 43. So the districts have had a very long standing relationship with the Honey Run Covered Bridge, stretching about many years to provide some funding for their insurance and some other needs over there. Post campfire, we've had a lot of conversations, initiation with staff and their board, and just trying to look at how we can partner and help rebuild that icon for our county. We had an approval of a memorandum of understanding in February of 23. And I give some of those updates in here on what that was, what it entailed. A lot of technical services that we could provide, exploration partnerships. One thing that's been remarkable to watch and check in with them is just how much progress they've been able to make with a lot of diligence and dedication. And so I thought it'd be a really good idea to not only allow them to provide an update on what's going on, but also kind of explore what some next phases of conversation. I'll come back to that in a moment, but basically looking to seeing if there's a work group, a temporary committee that could be created with board members and myself and other staff to meet with them on a regular basis and work through some interesting challenges they face over the next few years. But I'd love to kick it over to them. If they could introduce themselves and provide an update, that would be fantastic. Yeah.
Okay. There we go. How's that? Perfect. Well, first I wanted to thank, I see some familiar faces here, the board for having us. As Dan was mentioning, a lot has happened just since the MOU 2023 to now. If any of you have driven by to see the progress, we're very excited. Construction started, and you can probably slide through the slides if you want, so you can see some of the construction. Right now we're finalizing the second phase. It should be done fairly quickly. So the sides and the floor of the bridge are already up. And then in the next couple weeks, we will be starting with the third phase. We were very clear in our commitment to the community to have that be a local builder. And so we selected a really great partner, Pat Conroy of Conroy Construction. So his crew will be putting the sides and the top on. So we're anticipating that, we're hoping with any, no delays in construction, which actually has been pretty smooth, end of December, middle of January at the latest. So, and as many of you probably know, some of our board members, we have some great talent on there. We've got actually some engineers. We have a engineer, Quincy, now Consor. They were they put the plans together, but we're not builders. So that's one of the things that we, thought would be a great partnership with PRPD. We're not park owners. Up until, most people know the history of the bridge, up until after the fires, the association actually didn't even own the bridge. So we thought this was a great opportunity as we're nearing towards finalizing the third phase to have that continued conversation and expand upon what we had originally talked about in February of last year. So with that, you can probably just go through some of the slides. We can show you some of the pictures of the progress. Oh, yeah. So these are some of our partners, as we mentioned, that have been really supportive throughout the whole process. Q&D's local, Western Wood Structures is up in Oregon. Knife River obviously is local. And we've been extremely lucky to have Chris Souter as our project manager. He leads the construction management department at Chico State. So that was terrific to have him leading the helm. So you can go to the next slide. These are obviously some of the beginning when they're just putting up the first phases and bringing down some of the other stuff. Then you can just keep going, actually. This was actually at where they were building it up in Western Wood Structures. One of my college friends and I drove up to Oregon and took pictures of them actually putting together the trusses. Keep going. There we go. Yeah. I can share this with you. I have footage, drone footage of the 600-ton crane actually taking the bridge and bringing it over the water and onto the abutments. Took about a half an hour. It was really exciting to watch. Yeah, they built it. Yep. And then they put the middle down, and then the other sides came afterwards. So I think there's a couple more. Most of you might know Walt. And there's Mike over here putting one of the last nails in there. And then these are a lot of our partners that were involved, some of the crew. That's our last slide. With the construction, there actually are some enhancements that we did include in the build. One is when they put together the pad for the huge crane, they created a pad to the right of the bridge. So that we decided to have that stay. So that could be something where that could be like a potential event, people could have things there. And then also to the left, we are putting in two paved spaces for handicap. So that we feel like those are going to be some great enhancements. So any questions?
You certainly deserve it, ladies and gentlemen. I'm going to applaud you.
Well, I wish our leader was here, Walt.
Yeah.
Because he was obviously a big driving force. I'm the only board member that's actually from Sacramento, but I got introduced from a friend I knew from when I was in high school from Chico. He's here as well on the board, the ad hoc committee. And so people would ask me, they're like, why are you doing this? So you're not even from Chico. And I fell in love with the project and the tenacity and the commitment of the people, and just grew from there. It's been really a great thing to be part of.
I do have a question. Is the bridge internal going to be lit?
We are going to put lights, like the T lights above. So it's going to be, and then there are going to be the windows like there was before. So definitely.
It is wired. We want to put lights down there. We do have it wired to that lights.
Because that would be a wonderful event place.
We just.
So we've had really, I don't think they've been regular, but as they've been making progress, they've been pulling us in and just giving us updates and kind of chatting with us about some of the challenges and so forth. I thought the way it's progressed with those conversations, we've had two board members that have been kind of assigned as liaison, Director Belfay and McGrean, that they have been participating in those. But I thought, with this kind of having some closure on our MOU coming up, that there's a nice opportunity for us to formalize a temporary committee to work as a working group. It's essentially ad hoc, if you want to use that term, but a temporary committee that will have a sequence here that will go to the end of the MOU, come back with some findings for the district, and then have two board members that are really well appraised of what's going on. I mentioned a couple things in here on the report, but looking at some of the ownership models, the park, we've had some discussions, although it's been a bit premature, but about how to do some improvements to the park. Some of the items there also include new amenities, improvements, recognition donation options. Events are, I think, increasingly a big deal for our district and could be important there. And then maintenance and caretaker options and revenue. The group has expressed some challenges with their permitting and things like that on how it may be limiting on events in some cases, and maybe there's some problem solving that we can work on together to come up with some solutions. But pretty simple recommendation tonight, just to see if there's concurrence from our board to assign a couple of members or maintain our liaison committee members as basically working on temporary committee till this MOU is completed.
I would be happy to continue serving in that capacity if the board so desires to select me.
I will too, as long as I'm here.
Well, if any of you decide to drop off, I would like to take your place.
You're the alternate. Does everybody concur?
Yeah, I think, you know what, maybe best, because as a temporary committee, let's do it as a roll call vote. And then that way, it's more formalized for Brown Act purposes.
All right, can we get a motion?
So we're looking for a motion to assign myself and Mary Delafay as the board representatives to serve on this ad hoc committee on a temporary basis with us. Board member Roderick as the alternate. Is that the motion?
Just
Chair?
a friendly suggestion, if we make it coincide with the termination or the expiration date of the MOU.
I thought I said that.
You just said temporary.
Well, that was the intent, the temporary until the
Okay.
end of the MOU, or it's extended. Possibly could be extended too. Okay, well, anyway, that's the motion, right?
I'll second that. Madam Clerk?
Director Alma Green.
I'm going to abstain since I'm involved with being appointed.
Oh, you did. Director Mary Belfay.
I'm just gonna vote aye.
Secretary C. Rodwick.
Aye.
Vice Chairperson Jen Goodlin. Aye. Chairperson Robert Anderson.
Aye.
Motion carries with 4 ayes and 1 abstain.
Thank you so
Thank you.
much.
Yes, thank you very much.
And that brings us
Are there
to,
any other updates that somebody else can share? Or at least your names and who you are from the bridge board? I mean, is that okay? Some fun facts we don't know?
Yeah, my name's Mike Fitzsimmons. I've been on a board a couple years before the campfire, and I'm the treasurer. And so after the fire, Robert Catalano was our president, and Walt Schaefer was our vice president. And those two guys were really the instruments to really get this thing going. Those two guys are kind of the driving force. And before phase one, we raised over about 1.2 million just from donations to get phase one done. And we got that, we raised the money, got phase one done, and then we got some campfire money, and we were able to finish the phase two and phase three.
Thank you, Mike.
Thank you.
okay, that brings, okay, come on.
My name is Rick Fowler. Nice to meet you. I'm on the board, Honey Run Covered Bridge Association. We really look forward to working with you guys, and thank you for your time.
Thank you. All right. Is there any public comment? On the Honey Run Covered Bridge MOU. All right, that brings us to item 6.2, patch funding proposal. Dan?
Mr. Chair, I need to recuse myself from participating in this agenda item, so I'm going to leave the room while you folks attend to this.
Sounds good, Al.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So there's, and this report, by the way, is on page 44. So there is a request that was made to us from Patch, the Paradise Arts Theater and Cultural Hub, looking at a feasibility study for the center. We do have an existing MOU in place, and the summary of that is basically it's a coordinate and collaborate on events, develop a feasibility report for potential partnership, and potentially develop a follow-up agreement. Quite fortunately, I think from a staff workload standpoint, we were going to do a kind of a board level report on it. But David Zink from the organization for Patch has engaged with web management systems to evaluate it in a systematic way. And he can speak to the qualifications for that group quite a bit. But there is a recommendation to us to provide some funding for that effort to utilize that information and then help the board make some decisions on that possibly at a later date. One thing I was going to point out here is that paragraph that has the Patch partners should read the original Patch partners. So the Center for Spiritual Living Paradise, Paradise Community Center, Paradise Gym and Mineral Club have decided not to participate in that group. So they're not on that list. And David can go through that updated list right now.
And Paradise Art Center.
And Paradise Art Center.
They are
Yeah.
still part of it.
Yes. And they're not on that list. So that should definitely be part of it. Thank you. Unless there's questions for me right now, I'd like to, I think, bring David up and have him describe the project and what some of the products would be and the request.
Mhm.
Yeah, David, come on.
Hello, and thank you for allowing me a few moments to address the board tonight. Scott, I want you to keep me honest on the timer. All right. So yes, I'm David Leon Zink with Paradise Arts Theater and Culture Hub, Patch. And when last I was here, it was Valentine's Day. We kissed and decided to go steady together. And now I want to give you an update on how we're feeling now, what we've been doing about this relationship that we've been working on. So yes, we are 4 essential organizations: the Gold Nugget Museum, Norton Buffalo Hall Foundation, Theater on the Ridge, and Paradise Arts Center. We've come a long ways. You're familiar with our history, so I just simply want to give you updates on our 2024 action. Next slide. So let's go back one. Scott, we skipped a slide. Nope, you're racing ahead. Roll it back, roll it back, roll it back. There we go. Okay, so one of the things we've done in recent months is we've conducted a foot traffic study to find out how much magnetism a Patch campus might actually have in Paradise. When people are looking to recreate by engaging in the arts, how many do we think might be coming to a Patch campus? Next slide, please. And so we looked at Theater on the Ridge. They do an amazing amount of stuff there every year, 88 performances. We counted up in the mid 9,000 visits per year to their little shack down on Neil Road, and over 6,000 people in their audience. Next slide. It's more than a relocation project for them. If you've been to Theater on the Ridge, you know how stuffed that place gets, both on the stage and in the audience and in the lobby. They can grow their audience if they have more space. They can take on better productions. Next slide. Paradise Arts Center. They are doing amazing work in our town right now. Their membership has grown to numbers that are about 30% above anything they ever had before the campfire. It's extraordinary. And we put them in the mid 8,000s of visits per year. Scott, next slide. They too are challenged space-wise. They're turning people away from art classes right now because they don't have enough space. They need additional classroom space in order for instructors to take on more students. So it's a good problem to have. Next slide, please. They've begun to think about what their new building might look like. This is a rendering. It's going to iterate in the coming months, but I thought you'd like to see that. Next slide. Gold Nugget Museum, they're not yet open for business, but they've been operating. They've been working on refurbishing the old Ridge transmission shop that they've built. They may decide just to continue on there and only have a minor presence on the Patch campus. They don't know. They're living into what they've got right now, but we project that they would bring in the mid 5,000 visits per year. Next. And of course, they've got that location. They're working hard on it, spending a lot of money in that direction at the moment. Next slide, please. The Norton Buffalo Hall Foundation does not have a building. So we've put everything into supporting the Patch effort and raising friends. We know that eventually we're going to get to fundraising. Right now, we're doing friend raising by putting on concerts and other activities, both down in Chico and up here in Paradise. Please come on March 21st to the concert with Don Ross and Julie Malishka. It's a Thursday night right over here at St. Nicholas Episcopal Church at 7 p.m. You're going to love this show. November 21st. Yes, November 21st. Yes, but when we look at that particular opportunity to build, we think in terms of a deeper partnership with Paradise Recreation and Park District in having a facility that can be used not just for concerts, but also for classes, for dances, for banquets, for community meetings, for recreation. Maybe we'll put a climbing wall on the inside. Who knows? The sky's the limit. We're just thinking big right now. Next slide, please. And of course, we need everything. Next slide. So we've begun to imagine what a Patch campus might look in the downtown, and putting that together with a foot traffic study. What would be an optimal arrangement of our buildings? This is just above the Paradise Community Park. The image, you can see the first idea there on the arrangement of the organizations. And there's this big open space in the middle that looks like yet another opportunity for community gathering, more uses. If you put all of our organizations together, we believe we can drive a minimum of 34,000 visits to that campus per year. That becomes the magnet around which a downtown can develop. That's arts and culture engagement here in the Paradise community. And what a great way to recreate. Next slide, please. The Americans for the Arts, large organization. They do studies on how the arts impact economies. They just released last year their sixth study called Arts and Economic Prosperity. They looked at 373 communities around the United States. And the two closest were Nevada County and Placer County. Looking at the numbers, when a person buys a ticket for an event in Nevada County or Placer County, you put the average together there, whether they're a local or they're coming from out of town, the average between all attendees at events tend to spend around $40 more than the ticket price in the local economy. That's babysitting, that's parking, that's transit, that's buying merchandise and going out for a meal and taking a hotel. Next slide, please. So when we look at what economic impact that might have here in Paradise, Theater on the Ridge alone could be generating $250,000 in economic impact here for the town of Paradise. So we're sharing these numbers with the town so that they understand what the economic proposition is here in the downtown. We think that we probably could drive north of $1 million of spillover spending here in the community once we have a functioning downtown and the Patch campus is there, spinning that economic wheel. So we are considering a variety of locations. The good news here is that we've had several promising conversations with landowners on a block that we particularly like. Don't want to jinx it by getting over specific here, but about 2/3 of the block right now, we're in conversations with the landowners, and the last third is, they're just hard to reach. So we're working on it, but it could be that in the next quarter, we will become landowners for the first time in Patch's history. Next slide, please. And we're looking at total built space of north of 24,000 square feet. We think the cost might be in the $25 to $30 million range, and that includes an endowment. Next slide, please. So now you know where we are with our homework on foot traffic and finding a presence in the downtown. We turned to our community last year with an informal survey, asked a lot of questions. What we found on our own was the community is exceptionally positive about what it is we want to build. Next slide. we began to do our homework to find lookalikes and cousins. And what we found were a variety of business plans for arts and culture facility projects just in the last decade. And so we've downloaded those plans, we're studying them, we're seeing, we're following up to find out how did things work out once you built it, did it function the way you thought it should? Next slide, please. And in the process, we discovered that there's been quite a lot of academic study on arts and culture facility construction over the 1994 to 2008 period, during which $16 billion were invested nationally in building or renovating arts and culture facilities. So product averaged $21 million. And that led us to want to talk with firms out there that are consulting in this niche so they can help us wrap our heads around what operational feasibility would look like for a patch campus here in Paradise. We put out a call for proposals. We got 3 back. We put together an ACE review committee, and they suggested that we retain web management services, which is now working on their 523rd arts and culture facility project assignment, doing operational feasibility consulting in those communities. So they began service for us on August 8th and came to town, met with our organizations. Then they began to work with us to build a list of community members that they could interview in order to just assess the lay of the land, understand, how this idea fits in the community, begin to figure out what level of support may be coming our direction. And I'm very glad to say that they've interviewed north of 55 people so far. And we should be having a preliminary report from them in the coming weeks about how those interviews went. Next slide, please. So Webb proposed 2 phases of service to us at $78,000, nearly done, $39,000 each phase. Although we feel confident that phase 2, the physical and business planning, will be a natural next step, we chose to contract just phase 1, in part to see what impact it might have on phase 2 costs. And when phase 1 is complete, then we'll know that phase 2, we know what it'll look like. And we're going to report back to our grantors at that time and ask for the needed funding. So toward paying for phase 1 so far, Norton Buffalo Hall Foundation has contributed $7,500, and Patch has matched that for a total of $15,000 already raised. We need another $24,000. To that end, we've submitted grant requests to several organizations, 7 of them. 1, of course, to PRPD, and we're in process with 4 more. North Valley Community Foundation isn't funding consultants right now. They've funded a lot of consultants over the years. They're not doing it now. They loved our request. They moved on. So we went to Tri-Counties Bank, and they liked our proposal as well, but they're not able to fund us at this moment. So we have a live request before Feather River Health Foundation. We'll be at their next board meeting. More grant proposals have been submitted to Golden Valley Bank, Harry Chapin Foundation, and Bill Graham Memorial Foundation. And there are more than a dozen other grant makers out there that we have either made progress with, we've targeted, or we are researching. So we're hopeful of raising all of the funds that we need for this assignment. Webb is willing to work with us on a month-to-month basis. We're very glad for their flexibility on that. And that's the basis of the request that we're bringing to you now. You see what we have proposed in our grant proposal, and I thank you for your time in hearing our presentation. Oh, one more slide. Let's go 2 ahead, I guess, Scott. There. Should mention that our research and our survey and our process with Webb is happening at the same time that the town of Paradise is working with Urban Design Associates in seeking community input on the development of the downtown. We had Duncan Webb here in town to meet with town staff and town council members on August 10th when they had the open house at the Paradise Community Park. Good conversation there. We're both aware of what we're doing and trying to coordinate the fact finding. And we know that we're going to be cross-fertilizing as we complete our process. Thanks very much for your time.
Thank you.
I was just going to mention one more thing. before it opens up for questions and public comment. But this was brought before the finance committee and I had recommended, be brought before the board here. I know there was one question, David, out of there. I wanted to see if you could address, and that was there was a specific question about seeking funding from the town of Paradise, and I wonder if that's part of the list of who you mentioned you're seeking.
It is, that'll be something that we have to build a scaffolding for to work their process. But yes, we've already mentioned it to the town staff. We're building toward a town council meeting where we can make that request.
Thank you.
Any questions or public comment?
I spoke with David at the neighbor to neighbor kickoff and he sort of rehearsed this presentation on me. So definitely would like to see impetus to redevelop the downtown here. This isn't entirely a district issue. Definitely we'd like to have the town on board. And it's nice that this has been made clear that there's already been money thrown into the pot and that this is not entirely on the district's shoulders. So I know that the district has been working with Patch since its conceptual inception when all these meetings were online years ago. I see this as a natural partnership and willing to have district funds for part of this feasibility study and only phase one right now. I think, David is incredibly optimistic and some of the comparisons that are in your packet, like with regards to North Lake Tahoe or Park City, I'm not sure that Paradise will ever get there despite David's admirable efforts. So I don't know that things will work as well, but it's certainly worth having a look. And I don't know that $10,000 is the right amount, but I'm definitely happy to see our district work with Patch to incentivize development here, which also rebuilds our tax base to make sure that our district can continue to provide services. So if we can redevelop the downtown, that makes it easier for us to balance our budget as a district and not have to continue to use our nest egg to pay operations.
Thank you, John.
Well, I just want to say as the representing member of the finance committee, we received the presentation by David and Al and I were, I believe, if I recall correctly, both in agreement that this, at least venturing into phase one, supporting that, seeing what the outcome or the results of that study would be in the district's best interest.
Where would where would the funds be coming from?
Yeah, so that's an important question. So there are two principal line items that this kind of fits under. One is kind of the contribution to other organizations that we have. That is spoken for. The other component that I think makes a lot of sense on this, because we have an MOU with them already to get this information, is underneath our consultant and outside professional services, and there's adequate funding in that right now for this effort. We did sign an MOU, as I mentioned earlier, to explore feasibility. And this is a much higher level than what we were planning on doing with basically a staff level approach. So I think the information is going to be valuable for us to see no matter what happens in the future. So it'd be under that professional services budgeted line item.
I don't know if any of you met Duncan Webb, but he met with all of the boards of all of the organizations involved with Patch, and he talked to a whole bunch of other people. But the best thing about this feasibility study is he's going to tell us either way. If there's not a there, that's going to give the district a whole bunch of information. If there is a there, which is a dumb scene, but it works, then that will give the district a whole bunch of information. So I think community-wise, the study is well worth it because it's going to help us out on a lot of other things that the district needs to know. So.
Any public comment?
No one's online, Director.
I did have one more question for the finance committee. Was your recommendation out of that meeting to approve the full amount that was proposed?
It was the proposed amount, we recommended just to forward it to the full board for consideration.
Can I make a motion?
Please.
I make a motion that the board approved the funding proposal and we matched the $7,500 that was put in by Norton Buffalo Hall Foundation and Patch already.
I'll second.
Madam Clerk?
I need to note that I'm recused himself.
It's 10,000.
Okay. Director Alma Green was recused.
The recommendation does say 10, but I said that we change it to 7,500 to match what Norton Buffalo Hall and Patch have already put in.
Do we have a roll call?
Yeah, sorry, I didn't know what was going on there. Okay, so Director Alma Green is recusing himself. Director Mary Belfay,
Aye.
Secretary Steve Broadwick,
Aye.
Vice Chairperson Jen Goodlin,
Aye.
Chairperson Robert Anderson.
Aye.
Motion carries with 4 ayes. Ben?
And that brings us back. Okay. Thank you, David. Hold. All right, let's go back to 5.1, neighbor to neighbor subgrantee umbrella agreements. Dan?
Actually, Christy's going to give us that. The report, by the way, is on page 13.
This mic's getting touchy. Hi, good evening, directors. This subgrantee umbrella agreement is kind of expanding upon the board action from our September 11th, or sorry, no, was it August meeting? In which the board approved, authorized the district manager to enter agreements, subgrantee agreements for the neighbor to neighbor program with partner organizations up to $5,000. We had a couple of partner organizations whose proposals were approved that are in excess of $5,000, and also some that cumulatively are fast approaching exceeding the $5,000. And so per our previous, information to the board, that we would bring this back for board consideration for any amount subgrantee agreement in excess of $5,000. We are attempting to streamline the process instead of having to come back and say, okay, now this so-and-so organization is seeking another $2,500. So do we have approval for this agreement that's now at $7,500? What we propose is an umbrella agreement that then any approved agreements that were not captured within that $5,000 threshold or cumulatively will extend beyond that, if approved by the board, that we can then roll those proposals that were approved into the umbrella agreement as part of the scope of work, and the associated budget with the proposals that were approved by staff and then the grant admin team would be included in that not to exceed amount. So we have a list in the associated staff report for this agenda item that summarizes some of the partner organizations that are cumulatively exceeding that $5,000 limit that the district manager has authorization to execute an agreement for. And then also those that are already above that amount. The way that this, that the umbrella agreements are proposed to be structured is that we set a cap as discussed with each of the partner organizations, how many proposals do you anticipate submitting during the term of the grant, which in terms of executing events runs through December 31st, 2025. So it's basically another year and 3 months. So, and then they gave us back that number, and, you know, we tried to get a ballpark figure of what the not to exceed amount might be. So in this subgrantee agreement or umbrella agreement, it's important to understand that within that context of the not to exceed amount and the number of proposals they intend to submit, there is no guarantee that they will submit those proposals or in any way come close to, you know, approaching that not to exceed amount. There's also no guarantee that if they submit 50 proposals and, you know, this agreement said, you know, you're going to submit up to 40, there's no guarantee that any of those proposals would be approved. It's all subject upon, you know, remaining funds within the grant. You know, does it align with the grant goals? We also want to try and spread the funding throughout the district. So we're hitting all of the geographies and communities that we serve. Also, you know, kind of share it between different organizations. So there's not one organization that's really getting the lion's share of funding available. So within, you know, the upcoming cycles, we invite proposals to be submitted on a quarterly basis. So the next due date for proposals will be November 2nd. That gives our team a month to review the proposals and kind of score them and not score them, but evaluate how they relate to the grant. Do they relate to the grant? Do they align with the grant goals? Does this benefit the community? Do we have funding available for this proposal? And then from there, you know, once we think yes or no, you know, sometimes we kick it back to the organization and say, you know, can you enhance the interactive component so that there really are neighbors to neighbors interacting? So there's a lot that goes into that process, but essentially that's a lot. The umbrella agreement is really seeking to give us some efficiency in terms of moving through that proposal approval process, capping a number of proposals, and the not to exceed budget that they would be funded if all their proposals were awarded and we had funding available to do that. So with that, I invite you questions.
I wanted to add just a couple of things. One thing is, where you view that umbrella agreement, it's really like our master services agreements that we have, where it's a overall description of how we pay and a ceiling, you know, not to exceed amount. And then as the project goes on, there would be, or work comes up, there'd be a different scope of work and a project proposal. So this is very similar to that same approach that we've used in the past. One thing I think is really important, and Christy touched on this, is it's still subject to the process that we do with the state. So they have to pre-approve everything. Our team is getting a better state too, better understanding of the restrictions and how this program works. So I think that's where it has become important for us to add those things to these events to where they're going to be successful from the state. So someone may need a partner that we can pull in or suggest. And so I think that's been real important to get these things approved. There's one other thing I was going to point out.
Can I jump in there? There was one thing I forgot to mention as well, is that this is a sampling. We didn't want to overwhelm you, but there are likely additional umbrella agreements that would be forthcoming in future quarters. If you were to approve this format tonight, you know, we would again approach the board if there's another set of subgrantees that would benefit from falling into the umbrella agreement due to the cumulative financial impact of it exceeding that $5,000 threshold that Dan has, our district manager has authorization to execute.
So it seems to make sense in my mind, but I just want to clarify. The second set of proposals were for October, November, December, right? And so when was the first set of grants?
So really we went pretty slow in terms of rolling this out because we
Right.
were trying to figure out what we were doing internally.
Right.
And so we had some PRPD events. We did training for partner organizations and then opened up proposals for Q4
Okay.
in August.
Okay.
So
for
that's
quarter
really when
four.
it launched. We've had a couple of partner organizations that have held events in September, but those were, and one August 28th, but that's it so far. The bulk of them are really ramping up now. And
So partner organizations and some grantees is the same thing?
yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
So
the
then,
grant
for
calls
example,
them
on this chart,
subgrantees.
Moms on the Ridge say they may have already got awarded a proposal for October, November, December, and then maybe they've gotten awarded two, but this number 10, that goes until potentially December 2025.
That is correct.
Okay. And then you said you're not scoring them. You're just going through the checkoff list that the grant says or requires. So is that subjective? I mean, how, if you're not scoring it like on a rubrics cube or whatever that's called, how are you determining?
So this first round, what we did was just open it up very broadly, and we invited everyone to
Right.
put their proposals in. We went through them as a team. And there were 3 separate individuals involved with that review process. And our goal was to find those proposals that align with the grant goals and then try and pass out as much funding as possible. So it wasn't. Oh, I hear Dan's mic coming on.
Oh, no, sorry. I mean, to interrupt your line of thinking. Go for it. There is, view it as, if you want to put it in terms of scoring, it's a pass, fail, or incomplete. So,
All right.
so we're looking at from the valuation, the state has the criteria that they want these events to have. And if we can check those boxes and it can be pre-approved from the state, meets all the goals, we're helping them facilitate it. If they don't, we come back to them and give them some advice. Hey, you need to add this element. It's too soon for this, kick it out to next quarter or something like that. So I think that might be a good analogy. Think of it as a pass, fail, incomplete course versus a
And then
score.
once it goes to the state, do they give it a second chance, or are you the one that says, well, you might want to tweak this before I submit it to the state? So once it goes to the state, they only look at it once?
I'll put it this way. I'm hoping you agree with this, but I think our goal has been to hand the state ones that they say yes to.
Right.
So that they're not coming back to us and say, oh, this doesn't meet the criteria. So that enables us to have a lot of trust build up with them. And then also it gives us a good understanding. So our partners submit something that's, you know, it has a good probability of success from the state. Is that
Right.
Yeah, that's accurate. And there were a couple that didn't pass the pass fail. There was a couple that failed, and we tried to bring it back to them and suggest, like, you know, this as it exists doesn't meet the criteria of the grant, doesn't align with the goals. You know, it's not going to be supported by the state. Therefore, try and retool it into something that does. And, you know, we can work with you on that. But yeah, that does happen. But Dan's exactly right that we want, by the time it gets to the state, we want it to be a pretty assured process.
Right. Okay. And 20 or 30 or 40 more organizations could potentially apply and be in this chart right here. Because right now I added up, it's about 460,000. So there's still a couple $100,000 left to.
Yeah, and this is
Can't
just
think
the-
of it that way, because the smaller amounts that are underway is part of that other 200,000.
Yeah, that's
These are just the ones that exceed 5,000.
Oh, okay. All right.
Okay, so
Got it.
please don't think that there's
Okay.
200,000 more
Okay.
available, because that may not be the case.
Yeah.
and they may not even reach that not to exceed amount.
Right.
It's just that we
You had to come
it's
up.
their wish list, it's
Got it.
their
Okay.
best estimate, and you know, who knows what they're going to be doing a year from now.
If you want to get a stats way of thinking about it, this is like the 95% confidence interval that we're assured, not assured, but we're 95% confident that the amounts are going to be this or less. You know, they have to be less.
Right.
So they undoubtedly they're these folks have been, this first cohort already successful on doing some of these events. So I think that's why they're in this first grouping here.
That's great. No, I think it seems like such a process, especially when you got what, 30 or 40 in one day at the deadline and you're like, I got to look through these in 2 weeks, you know? So if this streamlines it, I think it's great.
I want to compliment the staff on bringing forward the umbrella agreements, and I think that's a great idea. I also want to compliment staff for having it reviewed by legal counsel before bringing this to this full board. I think that's a very positive move on your part. I want to compliment you for that. Just help me understand. Tonight, you're asking us to agree with these sub-grantee umbrella agreements as identified in Table 1. That's a tentative list, basically, the way I understand it, because there may be others at a later time in prior quarters that are yet to come, right?
That's correct. What we're asking for, and you can approve, individually or all in one fell swoop, but there are likely to be additional that we bring forward to the board in the future.
Right.
But for now, this is the
Right.
big.
Okay.
I just wanted to, I think a good way of thinking of this is we're bringing this in batches to you guys.
Right.
So this is the first batch. And then if it's approved, that batch is gone and we'll bring future ones, but we're not going to add to, it's not a tentative list. It's tonight's
Okay,
list is this.
I misspoke when I used the word tentative. It's basically, here's a first batch, okay? And all I'm trying to clarify for the record, you're asking us to acknowledge that first batch as part and parcel of authorizing the district manager to enter the umbrella agreements.
That's correct.
All right. And I'm about to make a motion to that effect once we hear from the public and we bring it back to the board. In the future, I would strongly encourage staff, when you have tables of these types of organizations, include the cumulative total of the not to exceed, add it up and put it in there in the staff report. And then in the future, when you come with your next staff report, include a progress of the prior ones that we already just approved, that type of things. That way we have a consistent format as you evolve and we evolve with you as board members in the future, because we have a long ways to go, right? Till the end of 2025. So these are suggestions.
Yeah, I think that's a great suggestion. I think it's going to be, especially this grant, it's going to be important that the board knows how we're spending it and the number of have some metrics with it, how many events, how many participants, and that should be available. I'm not sure what frequency we'd want to bring that back, but I think we could bring that back on a quarterly or 6-month basis. Or
Well,
something.
I would say maybe once or twice a year to the full board, but in the meantime, what you could do if you take that route, share it with one of your standing committees, maybe Park and Rec, because this is program related, right? You could do it with them, maybe on a more frequent basis, and that way 2 members of this body are always in the know, that type of thing. So all suggestions. I'm not making a motion at this point. We have to open this up to the public, according to the chair, right? And
has anyone made proposals that qualified that were turned down because they're taking up all this money?
No, because they haven't taken up that much money yet. Most of these organizations, I can give you for instance, Paradise Stronger. I believe they have 6 events this quarter. So they were pretty ambitious at submitting proposals and seeking funding. It's not guaranteed that they're going to keep on that pace of, submitting more. And honestly, if it were to become more, I don't want to say competitive, but if there were if the number of proposals received exceeded our ability to fund these proposals, we'd have to move to a scoring rubric besides pass fail so that we can make sure that it's done equitably. And then we'd have to introduce that to all of the sub-grantees and potential sub-grantees so they know what it is that's being scored before we move to that model. So what's proposed here is their best guess at what's going to happen within the next 15 months. So it's not that that's guaranteed to them by any means. It's not. They still have to go through the proposal submission process, and then it has to be evaluated, make sure it aligns with the grant goals, and then if it's approved, then approved by the state. If it's approved by PRPD staff, then approved by the state.
I will point out something else too. I think is interesting is some of the entities that have this funding, they may have one partner, and we've decided to not do that route. We have a multitude of partnerships that we're doing to help roll out these programs. So I think we're kind of fundamentally different on how this is rolling out and the structure we've created for it versus some of these entities may have one nonprofit that they're working with, and that's who's getting the funding. So it does mean for more work, but I think it's a makes for some creative programs for us.
Any other questions before I? All right, thank you.
Do we have public comment?
So I approve in principle not having every one of these contracts come before the board, but I do have a couple questions about two of the named entities, one which I believe is a for-profit business and another one which seems to be like an individual performer who I never heard of before I saw this packet. I also wonder if we really need to be approving for the entire scope of the grant today before we see how things move forward. So I might be happy to pre-approve projects for the first and second quarters of 2025, and then see how these particular sub-grantees perform in their events, and if other entities show interest that there might be more competition for the remaining grant funds. So again, I approve in principle, but not necessarily for these amounts to all of these recipients.
Thank you, John. Anyone online, Scott?
No, Director.
Can we get a motion?
Can I just clarify, Mr. Stormberger, did you mention that one person was not, one of these entities was not a nonprofit?
I believe Deja Vu Nursery is a for-profit business, and I don't understand the exact status of incorporation of iRay's movement. From what I could tell, from what seems to be a private Facebook page and no other web presence, that this is one particular performer who has performed it from the ground up events, but I don't know what this entity's capacity for providing the events within the scope of what the neighbor to neighbor grant is seeking. So I have some questions about that one of the dozen, whether that's an appropriate partner for this grant.
Would staff enlighten us on that particular potential issue?
Yeah, you bet. So IRAS Movement is it is a business that is out of Concal. It is a yoga instructor who also does aerial yoga. So there were 3 proposals that were approved for this quarter. The first event happens this Saturday, actually, and it's for families. It's kind of introducing yoga, aerial yoga, arts and crafts and that sort of thing for people in the community. So there's some other events as well. One's a children's organization. There is Deja Vu Nursery is also, I believe, a for-profit entity. There's absolutely no prohibition against that in the grant guidelines for this particular grant. It doesn't have to go just to nonprofits. So when my time's up. Okay. When we submitted our proposal to the state for this particular grant, because of our rural geography and the complications, we're not in neat little grid patterns like, big cities are. And so we put also an emphasis on interest communities. So there is an interest community around gardening and landscaping and that sort of thing. And so the events that this individual had proposed did align with community interests and, really integrating those folks together through interactive activities. And that's why they were approved. So yeah, not everybody has to be a nonprofit in order to receive funding for this grant.
So question, and this pertains to every one of these. If there is one of these subgrantees doing their initial proposal, doing their initial event. And for whatever reason, it just doesn't work. Maybe it might technically meet all the check boxes, but it doesn't work. The district still has the authority to say, I'm sorry, we shouldn't be going forward with any more of these events.
Yeah, absolutely. I think it's tricky. You know, what we don't want to have happen is to lead them so far down the road that they've expended, you know, their own, you know, costs that then would not be reimbursed through the grant. So if that sort of thing were to happen, yeah, we have.
But if they're approved for 10 events and the first one is just falls flat, we can just.
Right. Yeah. Then it's, sorry, you're likely on the pass fail scale gonna not pass so much anymore.
So our intent is to work with them on it, and each event, that's why it's a master service agreement. So there's this umbrella, and each thing that they do has to be approved by our staff, state. And so it's not like all of these that they may have calculated out X number of dollars for 10 events, but those events haven't been approved yet. And I will point out on page it's like 18, termination agreement may be terminated by the district by written notice should the subgrantee fail substantially to performance obligations under this agreement. So there is the overall agreement can be canceled if they're failing. So and that's not our intent. I think that's why we're doing this thorough screening process and making sure it aligns.
So just make sure reiterate what Steve said, make sure I'm clear. It just because it says 10 proposal numbers, they still have to get approved one at a time.
That's correct.
Right. Okay. All right. Thank you.
I'm fine with the board deciding to give money away. That's some of the fun. I don't want to give Dan all the power.
Is that a motion?
Well, one last clarification from staff. The program runs till the end of March 2026. Is that correct?
So all the events have to happen by December 31st, 2025.
Right.
We have up until March 2026 to seek reimbursement.
That's why you have that date. Okay.
That's right.
Because I'm looking, excuse me, I'm looking at the umbrella agreement and the term in the umbrella agreement talks about this agreement shall run and commence on, I can't believe this, you got September 15th, 2024. How can you have that as a commencement date when we're just now entertaining it tonight in October?
It's not. I that's likely just an error in the.
And yet legal counsel looked at this.
Well, realize this is a template agreement, so that's subject to changes.
All right, but on page 18 in the agreement, it says the start date is September 15th. Well, it has a conclusion date of March 15th. Beware the Ides of March, by the way, 2026. Is that necessary for the agreement, even though we have until that long to get reimbursed from the state or whatever?
Yeah, let me ask or answer that. The events are done by that date.
Long before that, right?
Yeah. But after that date, it needs to be, we have reporting requirements. There may be some other obligations that we still want them on the hook to provide that information rather than this contract is null and void. I can't put staff on that. So we wanted to make it match with the state grant, even though they can't do events.
That makes sense. Okay. I appreciate that clarification. Okay.
I make a motion that we authorize the district manager to execute agreements with the identified partner organizations.
Second.
Madam Clerk.
Director Alma Green,
Aye.
Director Mary Belfay,
Aye.
Secretary Steve Rodwick,
Aye.
Vice Chairperson Jen Goodlin,
Aye.
Chairperson Robert Anderson.
Nay.
Motion carries with 4 ayes and 1 nay.
Now we're going back to old business. Oh, we were already there.
Yeah.
5.2.
5.2. So this is on page 40. If you want to look at the report that's inserted in here and the resolution, this is Board members may recall back in 2019, county did an update on its local hazard mitigation plan. It's now due. And so there's been a process that county has been orchestrating along with other jurisdictions to provide annexes to that and get overall hazard mitigation plan in place. This is something that can be updated. There's some urgency from the county because they are trying to get this plan in place so that they can get in motion requests for park fire reimbursements and plans. So that has some urgency with the state or with the county to move through those and other entities too. This resolution was shared with us from the county and their consultant. Other districts, other entities, I should say, jurisdictions will be doing a similar resolution and process to support it. Be happy to answer any questions on it. We did provide a couple of links on the report to help explain some of the processes and what this plan is and so forth. Happy to answer any questions.
Let's start with public comment.
Like to publicly apologize for not having read the 2,498 page county plan or the district's 84 page annex over the weekend in the time between when I saw this item and today's meeting. So I don't have a lot of comment to give on the quality of the annex or the document itself with regards to the hazards present to the district that we might need to mitigate.
Thank you, John. Anyone else?
I did have one question that I submitted to staff earlier, and it was regarding on the resolution at the very end, last paragraph about in accordance with AB 2140. So I looked that up and thought perhaps it would be good to just have a parentheses what AB 2140 was, and then a parentheses because nowhere in the report was that mentioned, and then out of the blue it brings up AB 2140. So I didn't know what staff thought about that.
I got this resolution straight from the county. They sent me the template. I think that's why I didn't add anything to it, is because I took exactly what they're having everyone pass. I didn't make any correct edits to what they sent me.
Yeah, I think that suggestion is right on for most of our reports and so forth. A lot of resolutions we get are kind of these canned ones that are, from the body that needs it. This is sent out to all districts and agencies for this resolution. County has a little bit different one.
Right. I can tell this wasn't ours.
Yeah. Since you did that research, do you want to share since the board and everybody else with the AB?
It just has to do with the FEMA payments and the mitigation and it's really, it fits right in with this, but it just, well, what's that? What do I need to follow that? What is that? And so it just had to do with what the state, and I think that was 2000. It was a while ago that bill was passed, but it just has to do with exactly what all this is talking about. And you have to have this resolution so that if you want to, or in the need to apply for FEMA funds, you have to have all these things done in order to get them. State and government funds for getting back on track.
And if I may, since I've been on this board for quite a long tenure, we've done this before. This is not the first time we've been asked by the county, because every so many years that mitigation plan has to be updated and then readopted and so forth. And historically, even though those are voluminous documents and everything, they don't change dramatically from one update to the next over time. There are changes nonetheless, but it's mostly individual annexes that get the key changes, not overall the plan itself, but that type of thing.
And there was a series of public meetings, I think at least 3 or 4 that they had made in both Chico and Oroville related to this to get input on it. But it is a process where we can at a later date look at the annex to update it. In fact, they want you to do that as kind of hazards evolve. I think just a couple of changes that occurred with it is since the last one, pandemics were not considered a natural disaster. Some entities, I think ours is one of them, include it just in case it changes. And this happened with the last round that FEMA became involved with COVID response. So I think that's one of the things that's involved. Another one that was downgraded was volcanic damage in the county. So they had
You never know what last.
you never know.
do.
You know, we're in a volcanic landscape, and over the past 64 million years, there have been.
And you called COVID a natural disaster?
They were saying that because it wasn't a natural disaster, that it was a public health issue. So anyway, I think Director McGreehan's right. A lot of these are changing, modifying what was there before, and a lot of it is very similar to the past, just a little bit different order in some cases.
Are you making a motion?
Yeah, I move to adopt resolution number 24-10-1-544 as presented.
Second.
Madam Clerk?
Director Alma Green,
Aye.
Director Mary Belfay,
Aye.
Secretary Steve Rodwick,
Aye.
Vice Chairperson Jen Goodland,
Aye.
and Director Robert Anderson.
Aye.
Motion carries with 5 ayes.
That brings us to district report. What did I skip?
Yeah, one more on that new business, Mr. Chair. Item 6.3.
Oh.
Yeah, I will mention that there's a page that was inadvertently missing. It is new page 65. It is a staff report from Christy Sweeney on this item.
I thought for some reason they were printed out and already given to you guys. I can go make some copies.
We got emails.
Oh,
about it.
yeah. I can go print some.
Christy?
Do you want me to proceed if without the report? Have you not?
Okay.
Should I proceed or wait? Sorry, I'm not clear.
You can give us background.
Yes, please. We're having a break at 7:17. Welcome back from break. Christy?
Hello again, directors. So I appreciate you all taking this time to review quickly the staff report. But I would like to provide some additional context and maybe some additional background since this is coming at you a little bit new. Basically, as part of the 2022 Inflation Reduction Act, some of the funding priorities included in that act addressed the effects of climate change and how to mitigate those effects. And in particular, in communities that have been traditionally marginalized or disadvantaged, principally there is, within the grant guidelines, this is a community change grant, but they define disadvantaged communities as socioeconomically disadvantaged, rural, unincorporated communities. So it seemed to align quite well with the Lake Ridge Park and the community center there. This is it's called the Community Change Grant, but it's also the Climate Justice Grant. So you can see a nod to that in some of the I'll get to that. Anyway, so what the district has been working in concert with the Butte County Fire Safe Council on submitting a joint proposal to the Environmental Protections Agency, the EPA, for this community change grant. If awarded funding, the district would receive, well, cumulatively, the proposal is seeking about $16.5 million. About 3.5 million of that is targeting Butte Fire Safe Council projects. So that would be fuels reduction projects and as well as educational programs and outreach centered around home hardening and defensible space and invasive species and that sort of thing for people of all ages, so kids as well. Trying to help the community understand like how to create defensible space and keep the community safe at large by, if you're doing something but your neighbor is not, how safe is the community overall? So they're really trying to have a direct impact on the ground in terms of, doing a lot of project work within the community of Magalia. And then the district is also seeking funding for expansion of what would be the community center at Lake Ridge. So if the district and Butte Fire Safe Council were awarded this funding, the Butte Fire Safe Council would be able to do their fuels reduction work and then all these educational initiatives. The district would have funding to expand the size of the recreation center and include resilience hub amenities. So these would include a really high capacity air filtration system. So when there's poor air quality days, for example, people could take refuge in the resilience hub, kind of ride out those days so that they're not breathing in those toxic air pollutants, public safety power shutoffs or extreme heat or cold events. People could take refuge in the resilience hub. There would be funding for battery backup for the rooftop solar array and backup generator. And so that is what we are proposing through this grant initiative. I think it's important to note that this is not a matching grant. So it's, entirely money that would be provided to fund the project. The goals of the community change grant are not only climate adaptation, but pollution reduction strategies. So that's the indoor air quality, at least within the community hub would be, improved through the air filtration system. The work that Butte County Fire Safe Council is doing would also help improve air quality because there are a lot of pollutants in the air when there are, wildfires. And that is something that is, within the state of California, we're like the 99th percentile for wildfire risk, especially being right, at the WUI. So that is something that is important, when considering the future for the community. So there are a couple of things that are requested through board action tonight. One of them being consideration of the resolution that would authorize the district manager to enter into, an agreement with the federal government, the EPA, if awarded funding. I will point out that there is an error on the resolution on the approved and adopted. It reads the 14th day of August, 2024. Obviously that is not today. So we will have to make note of that and make the change. Sarah already got it. Thank you, Sarah. And then I think another important thing to note is the MOU that was included in this was something that was kind of a template that was provided to us. There's a lot of legally ambiguous terms in there, and this is something that our attorney has not been able to review. I think that, we are working with the attorney to go back and reformat it so that it aligns with the, the typical format and language of the district. There's Yes, please go for it, Dan.
Yeah, so one of the things on here, it has language referring to a partnership agreement that they require. Really, an example they gave us, and it's attached, but it's unusual for us on that. So I think what we would do is have a simpler MOU, memorandum of understanding, that would basically lay out our intent to work with Butte Fire Safe Council to meet the goals and objectives of the grant and its requirements. So kind of simplify it a bit, because I'll point out one thing in there that tells me this is a dated item. On the last word, telefacsimile is in there. When is the last time anybody used that phrase, or fax machine? So I think it's from a different era. But there are some, at least the core of it. So we'd want to modernize it a bit for our purposes, and probably leave it a little bit more open-ended, that our intent is to partner with Butte Fire Safe Council, meet the goals of the grant, if awarded. So that's kind of some change. It would make it more generic in a way, and an MOU instead of what I think the example has is a lot of details that I think aren't necessary at this point for our intent to work with them.
It should also be noted that if funding is awarded, there is a separate agreement that is a more formalized agreement that names PRPD as the lead organization and Butte County Fire Safe Council as a statutory partner in this project. And so that is a whole separate agreement that, obviously we'd bring that back before the board. But yeah, do you guys have questions?
I have a general question. On this particular application, this grant application, is there a specific deadline for submittal? And if so, can you please share that with us tonight as it relates to what we're being asked to consider and possibly approve?
Thank you. Yes. I apologize for not mentioning that. So this was a grant opportunity that was published in 2023 that's on a rolling basis, and they are accepting proposals through November 21st, 2024. However, this is a federal grant, and so it's open to organizations across the United States. So there is a limited pool of funds that are available. It's a big number, but the demand is going to be pretty high. They're anticipating about 1,000 proposals. The maximum amount you can request is $20 million, the minimum being 10 million for the track that we're on, which would be the actual implementation phase of the Resilience Hub and project work on the ground and educational programs. So essentially, the sooner that the grant is put in, the more competitive it is, especially because it meets a limited criteria set of being rural, unincorporated, and a disadvantaged community, disadvantaged economically as compared to other parts of California and the United States at large, per the definitions in the grant.
We also, this was really kind of came out of an application we had through the Strategic Growth Council to the state. They didn't have nearly enough money for what they had available. But we got feedback on our proposal that it had a lot of merit. And the state has, I think, a very forward-looking approach in that they're right now having technical assistance provide to grants that they feel are good matches. So what they're doing is that they've allowed us to utilize the technical assistance at no cost to us. And they were really successful last year getting, I don't know, 20 some grants through, I don't know if you recall, 17 grants through a big majority of those funds through this program are going to California. And so that they might want to change their criteria on it, but they were good proposals because they had that technical assistance that was making sure that they were good proposals going forward. So we feel very encouraged by the state and the TA on this, because they've given us very good positive feedback on it. So it looks promising for us. It is competitive for all those reasons that Christy mentioned, but I just want to mention that because that's important context.
I just want to make note, I have one observation. it's not written anywhere here, but at one point you referred to this as a community center. We have a community center there, and I think if we just make a mental note to always refer to this as a resilience hub.
Yep, I agree with that.
I do have a question because it's pointed out in the staff report that, this application, if it is approved by EPA, the feds, would call for our district participation in going ahead with the design of a building that would be increased in size, square footage, about 8,800 square feet. What I need to know before I vote clearly on this, knowing that there's a potential expansion to the building, are we at a stage now with our consultant staff that we've got an answer from Butte County whether or not there is adequate sewage capacity using just septic tanks and leach field systems at that site for that type of a building of that size and its uses?
Yeah, the intent, on the design has been, even though we want to move forward with the park as fast as we can. And so the way that the design is approached right now is there's kind of a donut hole that we've created for this that needs to have a certain size building, and so when we get the funding for it, that will determine the size of the building. And yet it needs to be engineered for the future. So that future has a kind of this size building on that site, even though this funding is a question mark. So the design is taking that approach. All the geotechnical stuff is in progress. I don't think we have yet the answer from the county, but the things look good so far for that approach. So it's designed for this size building. If that helps the question.
So my follow-up question to that is, because obviously you're telling me we don't have a clear-cut answer from Butte County Environmental Health yet relative to the geotechnical aspects.
We might, I don't have that answer today.
Okay.
So
let's just play this out. Let's say we make the application. Let's say we're successful. When do we expect answers from EPA? They have a deadline too, do they not, on the grants?
Yeah, I think Christy pointed out something important with this. We're fortunate that we have some project readiness and that the design is underway. This could be a completely standalone project. And so some of that work, our counterparts elsewhere are designing a building that has septic, that has all that. They would go from scratch. They don't have that information today. So to some extent, we're further along on that. And that's certainly not a requirement of this. They don't require that we have that septic solution in hand and solved right now. But, I think we will by the time this funding comes through. So we'd be ahead of the curve.
I'm back to my same point. What is the deadline for EPA to tell us whether or not we get the grant? Just work with me because I'm trying to share some logic with you. What is their deadline? When will we know? Assuming we submit.
So they are accepting proposals on a rolling basis.
Right.
So they haven't set a definitive date on when that would be, but likely within, 3 months of Mhm.
Approximately 3 months.
We've been very much encouraged because it is that rolling basis.
Okay.
That if you're first in, you're first looked at and possibly first approved. So that is, if you meet the kind of like what we talked about earlier, if you check the boxes, they're going to approve you. They're not going to wait till they get a whole cadre of.
So with that in mind, let's say we proceed, we get the authorization tonight, you get legal review in a timely manner and have the necessary documents to supplement the application submittal or whatever you submit. In the meantime, our designers are still working with Butte County Environmental Health, trying to get finalization on a go or no go as far as sewage capacity potential is concerned for the ultimate size building. And we hear from EPA and they approve the grant. If for some reason the county all of a sudden says, no, you don't have enough capacity, then that doesn't jeopardize our grant, does it? I mean, in terms of going ahead and proceed with building the building.
And Christy, I'll take a shot at it. You tell me where I go wrong. I think because this grant is a very broad brush. So it's $16 million for this project that there's considerable leeway on if you use, not everybody's going to need a septic, right? So for us, we absolutely do. And so that there's some leeway there. If we need to engineer a site, we need to add capacity, it needs something, a different type of system that what we have out there. But, you know, I would say from the preliminary geotechnical information we have, it looks promising for that. We just don't have that approval from the county.
One thing I can add to that also just we know based on National Recreation and Park Association data that the approximate square footage per individual within a community for a resilience hub or recreation center or, the public space run by a park and rec district is approximately 2 square feet per person. So already the size of the building that's planned per, the scope of the state park program is incredibly small for what's actually needed to support the community up there. So this grant would help to support the expansion of that building, not just for, the resilience, the really cloudy bad days, but all the days in between where we're building the human resilience by our programming and whatnot. So also knowing that the eventuality is that we will need a larger building, yet we don't have funding for it now. The plans were futured out for such a building of that scale. And so that was part of the sewer plan submission that was submitted. So Butte County, I don't know either, actually, if I can't, it escapes me right now, but it was part of the plan that was submitted to the county to support a building of that size. So one of the areas that is part of the Resilience Center is a maker space in the normal everyday, where people can come in and take a bike class and, learn how to fix their bike and that sort of thing. In times of emergency, that's a perfect place to distribute resources to people or check people in who are, finding a place. And, we need to account for them to make sure that, they're evacuated or something in that nature. There's showers on the backside of that building also. And so that's counted as part of the future phase, of that. So that was included in the plan as well. So those were the types of things that were futured out, knowing, we don't have funding for all that right now. And yet someday this is what we're going to need. And we don't want to have to dig the park up and put in a new sewer system. And so it was prepared for that eventuality.
Thank you.
So the overall grant program has $2 billion from the community change program, $2 billion. And what PRPD and the Butte County Fire Safe Council are requesting is 16,500, whatever that says, million. 16,560,000. And then you just said that part of a certain amount of that would be for the Fire Safe Council only to do their things. And so would any of the things that the Fire Safe Council, any of the programs or educational fuels reduction, would that require any resources from Paradise Rec and Park District?
Not for the fuels reduction work, but they are looking at using the Lake Ridge site as a demonstration for, defensible space, holding workshops there, for, these public outreach meetings, and workshops. So in that regard, yes, but,
so how much of the grant is for Butte County Fire Safe Council?
So there's about 3.5 million in just their projects and educational workshops. And then there's about 2 million associated with indirect costs that's, between our organization and theirs. And then, the portion that PRPD is seeking is just over $11 million for the Resilience Hub.
And if that gets approved, that money sits aside until we get funding for the building? I mean,
Yeah, it's a reimbursement grant.
okay, so we'd have to spend the money to build the building and then get reimbursed the 16,000, the 11 million. And would 11 million build that building?
Yes.
Okay.
I mean, that the additional portion of it with the commercial kitchen and the showers and all that. Yeah, not the other part. The regular 4,200 square foot recreation,
Hall.
not center, recreation hall. Yeah.
Okay, so then so that funding is what we also need to build the 48, the rec hall. We don't have that funding either, correct?
Oh, we do. So.
Oh, we do.
Yeah. So there is partially, we have that through the state grant. And then there's an additional where we're looking at right now, and just to lay out the options, right? So what we're looking at is if there is this funding doesn't go forward, there'd be supplemental that we'd look for to help complete the center. But what this would allow us to do is take that portion that's state grants driven. It'd be integrated to the building. So it wouldn't be like there'd be a box in the room here that would say this is state grant funding, but it would be kind of integrated in the overall building with the add-ons. So there may be two paths for us in the future. One is just sort of
two projects.
Yeah, completing this project that's the whole project versus that's completely funded with state or federal funds, or one that is a project that has some supplemental funds that we're providing from the district or some other as yet to be identified funding source. But it would not have. That project would not have the bells and whistles that this has for the resiliency features, commercial kitchen and showers and power source and all that.
Okay.
Do we have any public comment?
So first, I want to say I'm very disappointed in both entities for not bringing this to the Upper Ridge community directly, especially sooner. So
Sorry, I can't hear you.
okay, well, I can yell at the mic. Am I not
Okay,
online,
good.
Scott? Okay. So I want to say that I'm disappointed in both entities for not bringing this to the Upper Ridge community sooner. You all heard in September of last year that the majority of comment suggested you not even submit the SGC grant, which it's very disappointing also that when we saw the diagrams on October 1st, Patrick's drawing said community center rather than rec center, when previously Greg had told us they weren't going to use that term. So with regards to, for example, we've had 0 public safety power shutoffs this year. We had 0 last year. Most of Magalia is on its way underground. We expect everything to be underground by the end of 2026. Before you can even break ground on this building, there won't be any. So I think that this is very far-fetched to ask for 0.8% of the entire nationwide pool when we are 0.008% of the nationwide population. And I'm again disappointed that there has been so much effort put into this, another $70,000 to Melton in this month's check register, so much effort put into the design of the building that the community is telling you we don't really need, we want to build a park. And also with regards to the general designs with this donut hole for this enormous building, right? We were told last week that we don't even know whether the 3 septic systems on the parking lot where you paid $100,000 because you didn't have enough buildable ground on that facility, that site, those 3 septic systems, we don't even know if they're operable or not. And the district should know that. So it's very disappointing that we're trying to build this giant building that we don't know whether we have septic capacity when there might be operable septic capacity we never even looked into. And also with regards to like Feather River RPD recently divested their giant rec center because they couldn't meet the operations budget. And though I'm really concerned with our reduced tax base, how much ability this district has to fund a facility of this size, because I think Chris will tell you that room rentals are not paying the bills. So in this feasibility, it's like, well, how many millions of dollars per year is it going to take to operate this enormous building when what we have been telling you for 75 years is we need to have a park? So I'm very frustrated that this wasn't brought to Rec and Park Committee. The date in there says August 14th. So this has been behind the scenes for a long time. It wasn't brought up at the meeting at Magalia Community Center. It wasn't brought up at the specifically Lake Ridge Park forum that we had last week. We didn't know that this was under wraps. And I think that lack of trust that has been engendered is not going to fare well when you submit this. And the community has been saying, we never asked for this. This was imposed on us. I was very involved in the creation of the Upper Ridge Community Plan, and we weren't asking for resilience hub. Bruce Brubaker had that idea, and it got written in. But what we were telling him is, we need these facilities on an everyday basis. Like, we need to have a library in the Upper Ridge. We used to have 4 and they all closed. County is closing its libraries, the ones that are already in place, because it can't pay the bills to keep them open. So I really don't know that this is the correct use of district funds. Not just like, I mean, if the government wants to give us $16 million or $11 million for the building specifically, okay, but then we have to keep it open. And I really question where all of this money is going to come from in the future, that we're going to have this white elephant, like Feather River just divested their white elephant. So I think that before it has gotten to this point where it's coming before the full board, some amount of public input should have been sought out.
Thank you, John.
This is submitted by Reese, age 6, Morgan, age 4, Magalia, property owners of space 21 in the POA. They would like to express, they said in lisps, of course, thank you for thinking of us. We are excited to play at the park and to draw pictures to put on the walls of the Comedy Resilient Center. They can't spell quite well. That will keep us safe during the next fire. I think you know who those little girls are. They wanted to say thank you. So, public comment.
Thank you. Any more questions from the board?
Does staff have any comments on what we've heard publicly this evening on any of these issues?
Yeah, I appreciate getting comments from someone under the age of 10 at these meetings. So that's really the next generation here. I think there's a little disconnect on some of the Upper Ridge Community Plan had a lot of public input. It was adopted. It identifies a resiliency center. These are things that are very common in communities that have sought and benefited from it. We got to tour one in Tuolumne, actually 2 in Tuolumne County that are roughly the same size. One serves a community of 650 people. So about the same size as what we're proposing. I think that number that Christy mentioned is important to think about. Nationwide, community-wide, public spaces, it's about 2 feet per person there. So if you do the math on it, that community center, this community center would serve about 5,000 people in a community. So we're in an area that is used to being underserved and frankly getting less of the cut of the pie from state and federal agencies.
There's no way you're packing people in.
No. That is
2 square feet.
Yeah. So
that's everybody standing shoulder to shoulder.
And that's not what that calculation means. So that calculation means view it like tables at McDonald's, right? They're going to have so many people that are served each day in there. So there's a certain square footage that they have, certain number of spaces in the parking lot. They don't maximize what it's for. So it's just kind of a rule of thumb on what community center. And I use the phrase community center. We would not use that for the building itself, but that is a common phrase that people understand what it means. A lot of our documents that we provide have set, linguistics on what they call it. It's community centers understood. They may not have it necessarily on whatever we apply for a name that's, more homegrown. Anyway, I think we've gotten a lot of input from folks too about the needs for classroom space up there, indoor space for various activities. And, I think there's a lot of opportunity working with Magalia Community Park and the center there to expand, what is provided there with the center. We did have an economic market evaluation that was done some time ago, I think about a year ago, that was run by our finance committee that looked at it. So that had some of that information in there. We're in an area that has kind of low spaces for it. They didn't have quite the quantitative information that I would like on that, but yet we get a lot of information about demand from partners in the area and Chico State, for example, on places that are looking for additional meeting space and so forth. I think there's still a real need up there for having spaces and classrooms and all that. If the federal government wishes to invest in the community, $16 million for fuels and fire reduction and a facility that can be used for the future, those two young ladies that made comments, it seems like a worthwhile investment for the community, and why not give that a shot?
If I could just add one other thing, at the Lake Ridge Park site visit, I had a table set up for kind of highlighting the Resilience Center outline, and a board asking people, what would you want? Some of the comments were library. So that is something, that space could accommodate, having people come in and, the Butte County Library bring in their mobile library or bring in books, do a story hour, and then have like regular hours where they're able to bring up an assortment of books or people's holds, for example, up into that space. So that is something that could be accommodated. And I heard from one woman there who was like, nope, all we need is Magalia Community Park. That's the only resilience center we need. But I also heard from another woman who said she had 2 kids that were turning 3. And she said, I wish this had been here when, there was all the snow and it snowed everything in, and at least something for people to hike to where they could hang out together or get resources or that sort of thing. And I said, well, what kind of features would you want in a resilience center? And she's like, I want this, that, and that, all the things that go into the resilience center that are listed here. And so those are the voices that I hear from too. And I think there is, a tendency to hear from a certain segment of people that are in the same group that travel and attend the same meetings, but there's a whole huge population up on that upper ridge. And, and went into the schools and we talked to the people there, outside of, the meetings that are common, like the Upper Ridge Community Council, that's a good one, and we've been there and we talked to folks too. But also getting outside of that and into the community itself, there are other voices to be heard as well that do express an interest for this sort of thing. So I just want to put that out there as well.
I was going to mention one other thing. By the way, on the planned power shutoff event, we were almost activated 2 weeks ago here for PG&E as a center for that. So we have a contract. That's what that generator is. So if the weather forecast had changed, we would have been activated that weekend. We were scrambling because they were having challenges getting in touch with us over the weekend because they were getting ready because the conditions were getting ready to trigger this as a center for that. So there's still that need for maybe not just the undergrounded areas, but the areas that could be still subject to above ground and have needs.
Sorry, you go. No, you go, Jen.
And I know we didn't have any public safety power shutoffs this year, but we had 2 major fires in our county. And I know that if having access to a facility like that would have been huge. I also just think in general, we have to be really careful about a scarcity mindset, that adding something will hurt another entity. It often helps them. So I just know that we're all in this together, want to help each other. And I know I'm speaking for myself, but as a director, I want the best for all of the Ridge and its future growth. And I fully believe that a resiliency center will only help our economic development.
My comment was, I okay, I want to speak for the date that was messed up. That was not us planning this since August. The way I do my resolutions is I typically copy and paste, and I paste new words in. And so I took that from an August resolution, and that's why it had that date. I don't want anyone to think we were hiding anything, or we've been talking about this for months, because it's very new and it was just a mistake on my part.
I just got to say, it's not every day we get the opportunity to submit a grant for $16 million, particularly when we've been encouraged to do so by another entity. I think it's an opportunity we should not pass up.
And was this, because we applied for a grant before for the resiliency part, right? And was this the organization that declined it, or was that the what is it? The one, who's encouraging us, the SG? Okay, so was that part, the Strategic Growth Council, was that part of the groups that declined that first grant application, or was that the county? I don't remember.
Sorry. Yeah, that was the Office of the Governor Strategic Growth Council that was specifically awarding grant funding for resilience centers throughout the state of California.
And so now they're saying we have this new format.
They funded 9
Right.
or 9 proposals. We scored pretty high, but yeah, we didn't make the cut, but they encouraged us strongly, because they have when you submit a grant and they don't award funding, you're able to go and have a call with a reviewer, and they give you feedback on what the strengths and weaknesses were of your proposal. And they're the one that told us, this is a grant that you should apply for. It aligns perfectly. And so this is something that is another alternative.
And Christy, refresh my memory. I think we scored in the top 20 out of about 150 grants or so. Is that correct? Are those numbers approximately right?
Yeah, we were 13, but I can't remember if we were.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah. So we're top 15, top 20. And I think there were close to 200 applicants. Here's something else to think about. This isn't just our criteria for this. This is national criteria on investing in underserved communities across the country. So if we are have the privilege of being awarded a grant, it's how we stack up with other communities. And it's kind of a national priority, not just what may be around, certain neighborhoods or groups that feel like they're served well enough. So this is something that is I think, multi-generational kind of national criteria and state criteria. I mean, that's where we got the encouragement, because we could easily walked away from the next opportunity, but we were encouraged by the state for this. So I think there's quite a bit of momentum there. There's no guarantee on getting the funding either. So it's just an opportunity for us to try.
Well, and I think alluding to what Jen said, it's the whole upper ridge. It would serve the whole upper ridge. I don't know how big that population is, but the higher you go, the more underserved they seem to be. So I think it's not just what's around where the park is, it serves the whole upper ridge. So.
Can I get a motion?
Mr. Chair, I move to approve resolution number 24-10-2-545 for the Community Change Grant and Partnership Agreement, and authorize the district manager to execute an agreement between PRPD and the Butte County Fire Safe Council contingent upon legal review.
Second. Madam Clerk?
Director Alma Green,
Aye.
Director Mary Belfay,
Aye.
Secretary Steve Rodwick,
Aye.
Vice Chairperson Jen Goodland,
Aye.
and Chairperson Robert Anderson.
Aye.
Motion carries with 5 ayes.
And that brings us to district report.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So, in kind of keeping with the last rounds of us kind of providing a spotlight on certain programs, I think kind of undoubtedly our spotlights on recreation this last month. As Scott and Jeff get prepared here, I was going to mention just a couple of things. We were able to have a nice event at Paradise Lake with our staff, all staff meeting. Warm day, but we were able to use up the picnic sites there. We even brought out a couple of kayaks. Some of the people got out there for a little paddle around the lake. It was just nice to have staff in kind of a different kind of mode. A lot of folks had to depart early to go on to different things, but it was I think a welcome change in our routine there. Scott and Jeff, guys ready? Just a couple of other items I was going to mention as they're getting up to the microphone. Clearing, we've still been doing a lot of clearing on our sites, and Mark makes some reference to that. And shortly we'll be opening up. It's open now, but we're going to remove the fencing around this little island that I think Director McGrean had asked about before. It's been planted. There is a little trail around it, and so that will be open with some signage coming up here shortly. Mr. Amick.
Thank you, Mr. FSF. Look, if you wouldn't mind, everyone, checking out page 76 in your report, you might note that this is a full page of programming. There were so many pictures that accompanied the good work that we did this last month that we chose to add an additional slideshow because the narrative was so big that it took up several pages and had to be condensed down. September was a massive, massive month, and we're kicking things off with a flag football program, the inaugural, well, maybe inaugural for post-fire. We're now, that's JC and Willie Davidson, at a sold out after school sports program. Next slide, please.
May I comment before you change?
Please.
I recognize that as the old Ponderosa Elementary School, spent many days there. And I understand post-fire, it's highly fenced off, and I understand the reasoning why. Is there any opportunity that the district can get an agreement with the school district to perhaps keep them open on a Saturday or a Sunday? Those fields, they're a resource.
Can we table that until after I finished all the
Okay.
great news? Yeah. Okay. Yeah. Yeah. Okay, cool. It's the first, so after school sports, Steve, to get to that a little bit, after school sports is something that we've been working with the schools with, that we've been setting up with the schools. We've been working these, the Healing Trauma Through Nature programs. We've been running field trips, and we've been integrating with the schools. A couple of years ago, we worked with Paradise Charter Middle School to work through their expanded learning program, the ELOP program. When you hear ELOP now, think of it as before school care, after school care, and all of the other student care that doesn't happen during the school day. There's lots and lots of funding for that right now. And we're in the infancy of ensuring, just like the other grants and the other things that we do, that the programming that we supply the schools fits with their ELOP programming grant requirements so that these are permanent programs. What we don't want to do is sell these amazing classes out and then have to cancel them within the next year, 2 years. So we're working with the schools to make sure that not only is the ELOP money they have right now seeding these programs, but that it's going to then lead to making sure that we stay whole, because we don't want to provide these services and have to subsidize them. The good news is this class right here, full of 15 participants, each of them paid $75 and didn't blink an eye. these 20 participants, oh man, didn't blink an eye. So we're highly motivated to continue working with the school systems and continuing to bring back some of the things that we would consider traditional sports. As long as they have the funding, boy, we will show up. It also then sets us up to grow into the next couple of phases as these new sites come on board. We can test out, and as Dan has said, we're doing R&D big time on these things. You trying to share that? Awesome. We're doing R&D through running these programs. There's no loss here because the program is full and it pays for our time out there. We started with this image because it's a huge success for us. We know where all the students are now, or we know where all the participants are. They're at the schools. They don't have the capacity to provide these programs, and we have people that can use the work year round. So it's a massive success, and I just want to let that breathe for a second. So then, while this is all going on and it feels like a million years ago, the first thing we did in September is we did the Networking Neighborhoods kickoff. And we had so many pictures from that. That's even a separate slideshow in itself. Next slide. So we've got Prez flag football here. We've got Sophia's crew at Crane Park. Here's a before. There's an after. And of course, with Heather there as our queen volunteer. And Sophia, and I don't know who the other person is. Annalise, there's Annalise out there too. So the volunteer program inside of the rec program also doing great work. Next slide. There's Annalise. Next slide. So now we're working into the part of the presentation where we did so much up in Magalia. It's one of the reasons I invited our pal Chris here tonight. Is Chris worked really, really hard with us and expressed immense gratitude, which felt so good to hear. Izzy's sells out their food when we hold events up there, and when Magalia Community Park holds their Friday night concerts. Next slide. And that happened not long after the Magalia Family Fun Fest. This is actually a panoramic shot that would stretch all the way to the doors here. But next slide. Just keep rolling these right here, Sonny. Thank you for coming out, directors that came out to see this day. There's Willie Davidson doing the good work again. We had around 150, between 150 and 200 participants. This is inside Magalia Community Park, utilizing some of the things that they've already had. The face painter always has a line. That is our face painter. She was trained through our programming and that's her product. So I put this picture in there because I find that the faces of the youngsters don't get enough, their voice isn't heard enough. So those are the faces of the people that we serve up in Magalia. Both of these participants here were also Camp Courage participants. So it's really nice to see folks from our summer camps at other events that we have. These are the Rotarian volunteers hanging out, and they're playing checkers, but they're just kind of kicking it back. Inside as well, we had RC cars specific to age appropriate. Oh man, they had so much fun. Those RC cars don't require you to flip them back over. So they just keep going and going and going. That is a little girl. That's right. The freshly painted walls. Magalia Community Park provided this PS5 right there, a very expensive piece of equipment. And that station was full all day of folks cooling off inside. It was a very, very balanced program. And of course, the youngest of us need a voice. And though she probably can't speak, I mean, this is the good work we do in Magalia, and with excellent partners like Magalia Community Park. Next slide. This is the gear swap, kind of a pet project of my own to start bringing in special interest groups and to connect with the music community. That's Dave from Guitar Gear Garage was here with a full setup right where you're sitting. We had about 30 people show up throughout the night. with only 4 folks hosting tables. Yours truly is one of them. Those that came made out like bandits and had so much fun just talking music and gear and being nerds. Next slide. These are custom made guitars by a man in Magalia. Each guitar sells for about $10,000. The one on the left is a Keith Richards custom played by Keith Richards. And that was right where Robert was just a couple weeks ago. So pretty sacred stuff, neat stuff happening right here. Next slide. There was a little jam session that may or may not have stretched on a little bit too long, but it was fantastic nonetheless. Next slide. Two of the guys are park guys because they're enthusiasts as well. And we actually had 2 people drive from Reading, 2 people drive from Chico, and then one person drove here from Stockton, California, just for our gear swap. The Healing Trauma Through Nature program continues to cruise along. That is Butte County Community School out on the lakes. That young man that's in the kayak right there, it's his first time kayaking ever, along with Connor Finnegan in the back get there. It's just a magical program. Next slide, because they get that. And again, with the warm weather, we're going to continue to do this with these schools. We have 2 more dates this year out on the kayaks with schools, and we continue to receive inquiries to host field trips specifically for folks with that are non-neurotypical. And as we have a lifeguard that is also waterfront certified, that is Mr. Josh Peters, we can do very good work with special populations up here as well. Next slide. While there's some of us out on the water, there's others that are out on the trail. The Ridge Hiking Association partnership with Paradise Stronger had 18 people show up for this hike up at Lake DeSalba. Again, way up on the ridge. Next slide. Note the murder cones. Things get pretty intense up there. Watch your head. And again, you see Heather there, are one of our finest volunteers. Next slide. We had the pollinator garden go in, and I know Danchin mentioned just a little bit about this, but we're looking at this as a recreation opportunity and an education opportunity for our Healing Trauma Through Nature program, and having amenity here on site that can be, they can integrate with our field trip programs. Next slide. There's more of the good stuff. And I threw that in there as a reminder. Go ahead and stop the slideshow now. That it felt like we fit an entire season of programming into 30 days. Other things that are happening on here, the Youth Advisory Council for Outdoor Education for All currently has 10 participants in the program. One of the things we didn't get pictures of because we were working Fall Family Fun Fest is we also had Kids Free Disc Golf Day at Magalia Community Park on the same day. There were about a dozen participants, 3 families showed up, and a big shout out to the South Pine Disc Golf Club for being there and teaching everyone how to do their thing. You should have seen those folks learning how to throw a disc for their first time. Most of those families said they would be back the next year that we had it. The goal with the Kids Free Disc Golf Day is to mirror the Kids Free Fishing Day. And we hope that eventually it becomes a county-wide draw. We've onboarded 2 new schools for the Healing Trauma Through Nature program as well. Like kind of jumping around a little bit here. One of the things that we were asked to do is to be a homeschool vendor for field trips. And it looks like by spring of 25, we'll have a robust menu for serving schools throughout the area that are not typical educational models. I think the only other thing I missed on here was we've got aquatics. The pool pump was repaired. It's back up and at it. Both Paradise High School and Home Tech Charter School will continue swimming through November 1st. Slow pitch softball, our guy Willie Davidson is also working hard there. The leagues will come to an end with a final championship game October 9th. So when was that? It's coming up. Yeah, it's tomorrow. And I believe that that's the culmination of the report. Unless Jeff, did I miss anything you want? Oh, we get it?
That's tonight. Yeah, thanks for
That's tonight. Yeah. Yeah.
Championships are finishing up tonight.
We'd love to answer questions, comments.
What, explain the homeschool vendor thing again? You skipped over that really fast.
So what we're finding is that there's a dearth in qualified specialists to take classrooms out to remote locations. And since we're kind of the 600-pound gorilla on the ridge for that, we didn't previously have a vehicle for qualifying in order to with the current programs we have a contract in place for a certain number per year, and it's all fee for service contracted that way. This model will be very much more the first Tuesday of the month and the last Tuesday of the month, the homeschool groups for as many students as they wish. There's 5 schools that we would currently serve. Any of their students could show up at a location, and then we would get paid based on the number of students that showed up. So that's a model we're still exploring. We're in the infancy phases of finding out how to qualify and how to set the model up so that it becomes a feeder program for all the other things that we do. Because if we've got the students there, here's your activity guide, here's all those other things. Spring of 25 is what we're looking for on that.
Hey, thanks, Scott. I wanted to add something. I think it's pretty important. But all of this, what's going on, like just this month, right, with all the activities that have happened in comparison to where we were a couple of years ago, where we had a lot of struggles with. In the past, we had a lot of staff that stayed on for years, and we had a very dynamic situation. And now we have, I think, a really strong, very capable, new, young in their careers, rec staff that are coming through, and it's given us a lot more capacity. And, I know that one void in our community, a lot of people aren't aware of it. Schools no longer have after school sports at the elementary level. And so that's such a fundamental thing that has been real important. It's, to see this activity and the fact that it has demand. Jeff was telling me the other day that he's thinking about maybe adding another coach to it because the demand has been so great. But we wouldn't be able to pull out these things off without having capable staff that we trust, because for too many years, it relied on only a small cohort of our permanent staff to do it. And now it's been gratifying to see them mature and get better at it. And Scott, Jeff, I don't know if you want to mention something about that, but we have a very, if you see some of our staff on some of these events, say hi to them. They're doing a great job.
Yeah. Quickly, what I'll say is moving from a seasonal model where, for example, I'll use Josh Peters. He's been a lifeguard for us for 5 years. And as soon as the lifeguard season left, he would go get a job at Ross or somewhere else. Now, being able to keep him employed throughout the year, he knows our systems more effectively. And thus, as these new sites develop, he will be much more capable of teaching other people. Our goal is to create autonomous, empowered, and passionate students, employees and staff that think the way we want the district to think: service oriented and inclusive, trauma informed. We want to be the best at what we do. And I think it shows in the results of the programming.
I want to compliment you folks on going in that direction. And I have to share with my fellow board members, I personally have experienced some of these staff members that you've alluded to. We don't need names, but I think based on that cadre of people we have in-house, in the beginnings of these programs and so forth, I'm hoping, and this will be a personnel issue for you as district manager, that some of these individuals become more employed full-time, perhaps, throughout the year, because there'll be enough things for them to keep them on in that capacity, that type of thing.
One of the things that Mr. Fsef and Ms. Sweeney have been I would say encouraging is staff development training. And we have a fantastic resource for training them. And that is the California Parks and Rec Society has been wonderful in offering just a score of complementary classes and complementary skill sets that it's not costing us anything except for their hourly wage. And the return that we get in investing those hours has been incalculable, especially when it comes down to, like Dan said, trust. When you can trust someone to do a good job, it means that it leaves supervisors in a position to go and tackle the next thing. So thank you, everyone.
Yeah, I just want to say great job. My family and I got to attend the neighbor kickoff, and it was really fun. Well executed, lots of fun, great food choices. Loved, yeah, just really excellent job. Thank you.
I think a test of whether or not an event is successful is how long my daughters want to stay. And they wanted to stay at McGill Community Park for like 5 hours. So again, thanks very much for being here, Chris. We appreciate it.
Yeah, I think that having
Thank you,
that
Scott.
diversity of programs too, like up in Magalia and some of the other partners, it's going to be real important for everybody. So that's been really great how people have stepped up. That's all I wanted to cover on this, unless Jeff had something to add. Thank you, Jeff.
Two of the what was Ponderosa, myself and my kids, we spent tons of weekends there learning how to ride their bikes down that big hill, skateboards. We probably shouldn't have had skateboards there, playing basketball, play on the playground. So I'd be nice to be able to get into the schools.
Yeah. So thanks for that. So we've had some conversations with the school about some of their assets they have and temporary uses and so forth. I think that's going to continue this next year. So we had some preliminary conversations about it. They seem receptive to it. There are some challenges, and they're eager to kind of have some future uses out there. But we tried to pitch the idea of, in the short term, maybe those are utilized and used. So I think those conversations are going to continue in 2025 for us. Part of it for us too is we've not had the staff, even though we started those conversations with the school. We didn't have the staff to keep the fields busy, but now it's starting to change.
But
So
even under as a passive green space, I used to go out there and pick blackberries through the fence. And it was always there and always available, and now it's not. So I know the population has dipped down, but there's going to be more increasing demand for people to just have some open space that the schools can provide.
yeah, especially if flat areas where you can play a sport, a ball sport of some kind without rolling down a hill.
Soccer field practice.
Yeah, exactly.
Soccer practice fields.
But that, I just want to chime in and say that is on our radar, and we're pursuing it. Maybe not. It may take a little while to work through.
Any public comment on the district report? Then that brings us to closed session.
Mr. Chair, just a suggestion, and I don't know if this might, if this is board concurs, maybe we could do board comment now if there's some public announcements prior to us going into closed session. So
As you mentioned it, I have one. I want to bring people's attention to Paradise Symphony Hunchback of Notre Dame. And I also want to bring attention to that they have a new second clarinetist, and it's my son. And he's also backup Barry Sachs. So get your tickets early and enjoy the show.
Steve, what's the date of that?
October 26th and 27th, and then the following weekend, I think it's November 3rd and 4th. Saturday evening and a Sunday matinee.
Mary?
I have a comment here to read from Monica at the chamber for the district. She said, "We deeply appreciate the support, accommodation, and assistance from PRPD staff and board members in staging our high impact event, and we look forward to establishing a contract process that reflects the mutual benefit and collaboration going forward, and that the pumpkin patch section of the Johnny Appleseed Days was a huge success, and she is very grateful that PRPD took that on. Um, we toured the Paradise Community Center building yesterday. Was that yesterday? Yeah. And it was some staff and myself and Robert was there and Dan was there and the Troy, the gentleman who is the head of the whole project, and Dan ran around all over the place and we followed them like little lambs because they were walking so fast and talking so fast that we even lost them at one point in that little teeny space. But they're coming along. That group of board members has done a great job in working with that project manager and getting that place moving forward. So it's exciting to see that. And that's all.
Any more comment, Steve? Ben?
I have a few things. The Make a Difference Day is coming up this month on Friday, October 25th, which I know the district is participating in, but any volunteers welcome. I believe we're meeting here at 8:30 in the morning that Friday, where we'll have some treats and disperse to all the different activities, and we'll come back for lunch. Also right now, the high school is contending for a big grant to get a new football field or to help with it. And if you like the video on Instagram, that is what will help them win. They are in the top 16 out of 1,700 applicants. So they have been awarded $30,000 so far. There will be a big football party next Friday that T-Mobile is throwing with lots of cool stuff. So be really fun for the community. But how they win is getting likes on their video they just posted on Instagram, Paradise High School. And then Rebuild Paradise Foundation, we are in the middle of our handprint mural. It is going up right now. It is along the bike trail right across from Paradise Community Park. I encourage you to go see it. And we will be having our ribbon cutting on Saturday, November the 9th, commemorating the 6-year anniversary of the campfire. And we are doing that with the town, who will be also planting daffodils. So we'll have free ice cream. Kids will get to see their handprints, and it'll be more of a celebratory event.
Thanks, Ken. Al?
I don't have much to share, but since our last regular meeting in September, on September 11th, we all conducted a special board meeting on the 18th. I think most of that was closed session. And then just for your edification, the Butte LAFCO Commission, for some reason, we did not have a meeting in the first Thursday of this month of October. I had the pleasure of volunteering during Johnny Appleseed days in the pie pavilion, and I've never cut so many pies in my life, I tell you, but survived that. We had plenty of volunteers there. It was good to see people I know from Magalia there too, as well, and that was well attended. On the state level, on the CARPID, that's the California Association Recreation Park District Board. Our next meeting is scheduled for October the 16th. It's an in-house meeting, so I'll have to attend that down in Roseville. And if anything outstanding occurs in that, I'll be happy to share that at our next meeting in November. Also, I did attend. I had the pleasure of attending our Family Fun Fest up in Magalia, and I thought that was excellent. And the local people that helped there, I learned a lot. It was a fun day. That's all I got.
That now brings us to closed session at 8:36. Welcome back to open session from closed session. And at this point, we are going to adjourn till our next regular meeting on November 13th at 6 o'clock, right here. Good night.